Welcome to the Exponential Minds podcast. The research, development, launch, and growth of new technologies is creating incredible momentum in the modern world. Join futurist Nikolas Badminton as he talks with the innovators and the exponential minds that are tackling some of the biggest problems and creating solutions that are propelling humanity to the next level.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Exponential Minds podcast. My name is Nikolas Badminton. I'm a futurist that helps organizations and countries look out 5, 10, 20 years into the future. And today, our opening podcast of Season 3 is someone that's spoken at Dark Futures and is a social media, digital and internet expert, Melissa Eshaghbeigi. She's a millennial on the internet, exclusively thinks and talks about the World Wide Web. She's curious about the intersection of internet culture and real life. She also tells stories about what people are consuming online to inspire new, relevant and authentic ways for brands to connect with people. She works as a cultural strategist in the ad world and has worked on projects for Adidas, Levi's, Miller Genuine Draft, and most recently, the National Film Board of Canada. Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited. And today, what's really exciting about this is we're sort of at this cultural uprising. You know, social media, these continual waves of innovation, new platforms, new kinds of algorithms to capture our youth and beyond. You know, we're looking at the world of the internet and social media and influence. But this new world of social has moved from Facebook and Messenger into self-adulation and the dominant force of influencers in Instagram. And what I think is the truly terrifying and highly addictive TikTok. So what do you say about this current state of affairs, Melissa?
What do I say about this current state of affairs? Well, it's a wild world. The internet is a beast in and of itself. And what's been interesting for me is I come from such an appreciation and love for the internet. Like I used to call it my safe space, right? Which kind of makes no sense because it's also probably one of the darkest places you can be online, right? Like you can find your ally or your support system, whatever that means for you, whatever your agenda is specifically. I think about my journey with the internet, and I was like one of the last generations that kind of remembered a pre-internet life. And even then, like I can't claim that. If I said that out loud to like a bunch of Gen Xers, I'd be in a verbal argument. But I do remember my first moments of signing online and Googling and going in different messenger forums and really just like mirroring and mimicking what my brother was doing. Right. And to see, because he was a bit older than me, and to see how much has changed in my lifetime is wild. To see the agency, the lack of agency, the ownership, the algorithm is like destiny. It's been really fun for me to think about, but also very terrifying. Like TikTok, you mentioned TikTok. TikTok is something I've been trying to get people to be interested in for like a year and a half. And the TikTok we have today versus
you're talking professionally, right? Or
yeah,
on a personal level as well.
Both. Well, yeah, like I've always been in my friend group and in my life and even in work, like the person who's on the weird parts, the early adopters. Like yeah. I professionally, I was trying to get different brands to be excited about it, curious about it, open to it. And I've come across that challenge with every other version of that, right? Like when I first started my career, I remember explaining to brands like McDonald's what Snapchat was. And right. They were like, we have no business on that platform. And I was like, what do you mean you have no business on that platform? I'm telling you, your business should be on that platform. Right. I am your consumer. It's like from the personal sense, I'm only just like starting to get comfortable with my digital identity being like one of my main forms of identity. Right. And I have friends in the real world who don't know about my TikTok or who don't know about my Instagram accounts because I have multiple. It's been a struggle to like get certain people to be interested in it. And at the same time, it's been amazing to see the people who are interested in those platforms, in those spaces and what's happening.
But what draws you into like new platforms and whatever? Because obviously, you know, okay, I'm going to age myself a little bit now. I'm a Gen Xer putting up my hand there. So, you know, BBS and IRC, early days of the internet, Friends Reunited, you probably never heard of, which was like a network of everyone you went to school with, and it was sold for like $10 million to Friendster or MySpace or something like that. And then you've got MySpace, and I remember building like podcasts, meeting musicians on there, doing a whole bunch of stuff. But like this world that we're in has got so many platforms. Mm-hmm. Snapchat is still relevant. You've got Instagram and Twitter, you've got LinkedIn, you've got all these different ways of connecting with people. And then TikTok, you know, it's like this galvanizing moment of purity, of mimetic sort of dancing and music, and this sound clash. And of course brands don't get it. I mean, most people don't get it. The kids don't want to be captured by brands. You know, I'm on TikTok, and as someone that watches it, I don't have an account. I take a look, and you know, an hour or two can go by very quickly, and mostly out of absolute confusion why people care this much. But I'm seeing this broad range of people on there, different ages, different abilities, different, you know, sexualities. You know what I mean? What's going on right now? Because it seems like we're trying to punch our way out of the paper bag of authority in a way, you know.
I think so. For me, what has always drawn me to these new spaces is I'm just curious. I'm curious about people and their relationship with the internet, because I think about my history with it. And like, as a young woman of color who was like a daughter to immigrants, pop culture was my common language to connect with people. And when I got like more interested in the internet, there was an understanding that there's so many forms of culture, and that there are micro communities. And ultimately, I think that's what is drawing people to a platform like TikTok, is this element of like discoverability and relatability, that like your experience is not solely your experience. There are other people who think like you or look like you and are feeling what you're feeling. And it's just this, like, the way that TikTok has been successful in separating itself from other brands is that it's a bit chaotic. A lot of people don't like it at first, right? Like, they talk about the hour or two that they spend, and they're like, what did I just watch? Like, you probably came across that wonderful man who has quit his soda addiction. He's like on day 110.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Every day he films himself and he says like, hey, day 43, no soda pop. And he probably has like 1 million followers at this point.
Wow.
And they're supporting him and committing to this decision that he's made for his life. So for me, it's really about like relatability and experience, and just having the ability to like own a narrative, right? Like, if you think about the Indigenous community and how they've used TikTok, I've learned more from the Indigenous TikTok creators than I have from the Canadian education system.
Right. It's fascinating. I actually did, when I became a Canadian, I read this 84-page document, and there was like half a page, which was about Indigenous nations. Throw that away. Now I've got a lot of friends from various nations, Chimisan and Cree and Kwakwaka'wakw, and, you know, the Eshaghbeigi, where, you know, we're in Toronto, and we have to recognize that you know, the Mississauga of the credit, and, you know, we're here, right? We have to recognize that. But also, yeah, you do see this. It's fascinating to me. It feels like a trauma platform. It seems like somewhere that it's like it's almost like a one-way therapy session for these people. Yeah. And there's a validation of, in the conversation, it seems like the conversations are a little deeper and people care. There's still the trolls and there's still the flamers, but like this, it seems like the connection is incredible. It seems like even in the LGBTQ community, even like it's kind of turned into a lesbian dating app in a way as well, right? It's kind of weird that TikTok's become this thing that every other platform's trying desperately to be. Facebook's trying to be a dating platform. It's trying to be a video platform. It's not. And it's never going to be that way. So, is Instagram? No, because it's become overrun by brands. There's almost a purity in TikTok, right?
There is. And like a while ago, I think it was in March, I wrote a piece called Your Brand Has No Business Being on TikTok.
Right.
And I was such a clickbaity title, but like the point of it was that like there's this authenticity that exists in this space right now. And we can learn from it and support it. And I mean, my ultimate dream with working in advertising and marketing is to co-create with communities.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like we live in a capitalist system. This is the world as it is. And the very little that I can do is use capital to create with the community, and they make decisions based on what they want to see. Then perhaps there's a little bit of harmony there in terms of brands being able to be a part of that narrative. I haven't really been like too impressed with a lot of the brand stuff that I see on TikTok. And there's like a huge difference between an organic channel strategy versus like a paid media one.
Right.
The like actual ads that you see on TikTok, some of them are really bad. Like really, like clearly people who have never been on the platform are trying to just like monetize this like very lucrative moment of all these eyeballs, but that's not what people want. People want to feel seen. They want to be heard.
Right.
They want to empathize. And that exists in so many different forms. It's not solely getting a window into what a lesbian couple's dynamic might be like. And there's also so many gay versions of that. Like I have so many gay content creators that I love following.
Right.
Because I've gotten an understanding of who they are as humans on an individual level that I haven't really had the opportunity to see in many forms of mainstream media.
It's interesting that vulnerability is something that does come from like a more pure experience. I mean, no question. When was the last good, like really good, connective, heart-wrenching, like dropping your phone, oh my God, kind of social media brand campaign that's existed? I can't name them. You know, you get brands like Nike that come out with fantastic videos. Mm-hmm. Wyden Kennedy, sprinkle their magic on it, but again, it's just a video, and it's an aspiration thing. It's not a feelings thing, a deep feelings. It's not like the just do it or the female liberation in sports thing anymore, right? Mm-hmm. It seems like we just have to do this so that we remain relevant, so that we can sell more sneakers, or we can do this or we can do that. And even the world of TikTok, where someone like Addison Rae gets paid $90,000 for a 12, 15 second dance or message. Mm-hmm. I don't know, what, selling paper towels or something?
Yeah, it's
like there's something wrong, right? I mean, that you know, are we at this inflection point where brands and advertising's completely lost its relevancy in the world, and the kids are going to take over and liberate us from this banal, like, non-revolution that's happening?
Like, that's definitely a direction it could go. It's like hard for me to like really project what I think 5 to 10 years will look like from now, because to me, there's so many things happening on a platform like TikTok, right? Like there is the Addison Raes and the Charli D'Amelios who are dancing, but even like, look at those two women. Addison Rae now has a Spotify deal with her mom. So they're like creating a podcast, and Charli D'Amelio went on to create a YouTube channel with her sister. So the way that they're expanding both of their respective empires are through content.
Right.
And I've been trying to communicate this for however many years now, that that's the way in for the future of advertising. Like we can still have banner ads, print ads, commercials, but what people want is content. And I truly don't think TikTok would have grown exponentially if we were not put in a global pandemic and content consumption wasn't one of the like easiest ways to escape, to entertain, to connect, to relate. Content is capital. Content is what drives all of us. Like, look at what we're doing right now. We're creating content. So that's what I see the future of this industry being. It's hard to think about what a world looks like with Addison Rae shelling toilet paper. That's definitely going to be something that happens. Am I going to be purchasing the toilet paper she recommends? Maybe not. Will my 12-year-old cousin, when it comes to her making those decisions, be purchasing the Addison Rae supported toilet paper? Probably. Like, think of all the beauty bloggers that started on the early days of YouTube, and now they have their own cosmetic brands, right? And they're multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar businesses. We have Anastasia Beverly Hills, we have Huda Beauty, James Charles.
Right.
these individual creators are becoming their own mega brands. And so one direction that I see everything going is like the human is the ad, your brand is the ad, whatever version of your identity you're putting online is the ad. I don't know how we're going to come at like a crossroads when it's like Tide versus Addison Rae, but I can see that happening. I definitely see that happening.
It's kind of interesting. You also get people burning out and saying, screw it, I'm out. Like Ingrid Nielsen. So I'm a big YouTube fan, right? So I follow all this. I try and soak it all up. You know, I've got an admission. I used to be work in the digital advertising world as a digital strategist. It was a soulless, heartless world to deal with, because let's be honest, account people, clients, advertising agencies don't get digital. It's very common base element that it's free, right? It's free, and it's free thinking, and you can't capture it, and you can't just follow a trend and suddenly be as big as, you know, Oprah or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, you know, Ingrid Nielsen, people like that are just running away saying, screw it. They, you know, people transcend social media. I imagine, what was it, Addison Rae, she just got a film deal. I'm sure Charlie D'Amelio, Dixie D'Amelio, her sister, is like a musician now. You know, you've got all these people, all these platforms are catapulting people up into the stratosphere. But it seems like if you don't exist in social, you don't exist at all. But then if you're trying to express yourself in new ways and trying to break the shackles of what people thought you were, then it can get pretty gnarly as well, right?
For sure. I mean, like, part of like what you just said made me think about someone like Jenna Marbles, who was like a legacy YouTuber, and over the course of her career, she had to apologize for a lot of things that she had said and done, because culture has changed. Our understanding of what is right and wrong has changed. But with the rise of certain movements or certain conversations, she got to a point where she couldn't handle it anymore. And she's quit being an online personality, which was a huge loss for the internet community. And I have no idea what she's doing now in her real physical life. Like, I think a lot about, a couple of years ago, I used to have all these conversations about your digital identity versus your physical identity. And they were two separate entities that occasionally impacted each other. Now, if I posted something online that was maybe problematic or unflattering, that could get back to my employer, I could lose my job. Now I'm at a point where if I post something compelling enough online, that gets attention and then creates new opportunities for me. I walk around and some days I'm like, it's a pandemic, so I'm the only person I see and talk to. And so my digital identity is my primary form of interaction with the world now.
Right.
And I think we don't discuss that enough. Like, if advertisers and brands and marketers are like so slow at adopting and integrating fun and innovative solutions, like the approval process to get a social post done is draining. You have to go through like legal and blah, blah, blah. And like, it's not open. The system's not open in a pace to respond to actual culture. And that's why culture has gone on to create at its own pace. That's why there is this influx of creator culture, because everything else is too slow. I remember in the early days of my career, I was having to walk people through my creative team through Snapchat. And Instagram had already kind of replaced the need that Snapchat had fulfilled for our target consumer at that time. And I wasn't even in a place where I could explain that. I had to start at step one, which was, okay, so here's Snapchat.
Right.
There's these things called AR filters.
Yeah.
People love them. Let's make one. It's been a wild ride. Like, that's the only way that I can really summarize it. Like, I'm swimming in links at all times, trying to keep up with like the who's who. And the funny thing with the internet is you could talk to anyone. Like, we're all internet users. Right. We're all consuming something. But sometimes when I speak to certain groups, it's like I'm talking in a foreign language. Like, not a lot of people that I know who Addison Rae is, know the magnitude of what she can influence or impact. And I like, they're on other parts of the internet. And so that just makes me want to know, like, what are they looking at? Are they consuming Bon Appetit? And have they continued to consume Bon Appetit after all of the different diversity related issues that have come to surface in the last couple of months in that organization? Yeah. Or are they watching Twitch streamers? And if so, like, what's that like for them? Are they gamers, or are they just consuming? Are they just watching? Is that their form of entertainment? There's so many different parts of the internet. And I only represent one part of it that's like fueled by my curiosity. And I wish that there were more versions of me that people could openly talk about and be critical and curious of what they're consuming and bring that into the work that we do, because it's important. It's ultimately all about representation and empathy for me.
It's everyone's got a pretty short memory when it comes to the power of digital, and as soon as something takes hold, people are like, we want that, and they're always catching up, and it's like, okay, just let yourself be free, let it be free. Like you talk about AR filters. Do you know what? Someone that you don't particularly like is gonna do that and use it. Are you ready? Are you ready to let that run free? You know, truly, like, you know, memes are those small pieces that just travel. You know, I don't think any brand in the world can really get behind that. Even the most edgy brands can't do it. A brand manager will not sign it off. A brand manager will not take the chance. And in ad agencies, you have to go through multiple levels. I worked in multiple ad agencies, and there were some wild thinkers in the creative people, and there were some very boring thinkers in the creative field. You know, make a TV ad, do some Facebook ads. You know, it's sort of, it's why I left the ad world. It was a toxic, horrible, limited environment, especially for people that think about digital and new ways and innovation and whatever. And I did things like I did augmented reality ads, I did 3D printing, I did a whole bunch of stuff, and I had to literally sneak it in the back door because no one got it right. You had to be on the grassroots. But now I've come out of it, it seems like, you know, now's the time to say screw the brands, keep it pure, and, you know, beyond trying to make money through association in a way, just stay on message and do whatever the hell that you like. I mean, where are the rebels? Where are the social media rebels today? Or is everyone falling into line?
I think they still exist. They're still around. It's just like, for me, the trajectory of a social media rebel is to find people that respect and admire and align with your message. Yeah. And then you become this monetized thing. You become the brand. Right. That's what's like hard to step away from. Is if I had to make some assumptions about what the future looks like, we have all these independent brands that are going to compete with the big brands. And like the trajectory of what my potential career growth could look like is that I get hired by Addison Rae's PR team, or I get hired by like Mariah Carey's social team, because I have an understanding of culture and the fandom and can tap into it and engage. That's like ultimately what everyone's trying to do, is engage with people that align with what they believe in, or the product or the service that they've created.
Yeah. What does the world look like without social media? Say if it switched off, what happens to the kids? I mean, back in the day, you'd listen to your parents, or you'd reluctantly sit there and let them speak at you, right?
Well, you're talking to someone.
Or you fanzines. I'd buy fanzines. I was a skateboarder. You'd buy fanzines, and there'd be punk rock records with like insert slips that would be like, screw these guys and screw those guys. And his, you know, there's a band called Dead Kennedys back in the day, and they always used to publish a magazine called Fuck Facts. And it was just full of this stuff that like broaden your perspective on liberal, you know, anti-Nazi, you know, driven like agendas of activism, right? I mean, now social media, everyone thinks they're an activist, and then they're like the opposite. They're selling, you know, widgets, you know?
So it's hard for me to answer like a question like, what does the world look like if we all go offline and like we're off social media? Because I literally have a Wi-Fi tattoo. Like, that's how committed I am to the World Wide Web. I've got a cursor on my middle finger and a Wi-Fi.
Really? Is this true? Okay.
Yeah, I'm internet first. I know it's a toxic place, and that's been really, really hard for me in the pandemic, because it was my safe space. It was where I would watch like someone like Philip DeFranco tell me the news, right? And then I would watch some beautiful TikTok makeup artists create looks that I would never wear, but the artistry, like the artistry in makeup, the artistry in hair, like it's been really difficult for me because at the same time, like I remember March 11th through 13th, which is really when my world changed.
Yeah.
I remember like Sarah Palin was like performing on some reality TV game show. Kobe Bryant died and Trump announced some news story, and it like going through my news feed, it was the most chaotic summary of what was happening in the world. And we kind of experienced that on Friday with the passing of RBG. Like if you saw anyone's social feed, or maybe like mine and people like me, it was like a lot of feminist voices just saying fuck, like fuck what happens to our reproductive rights, what happens to our rights as humans. There was this other wave of vote, please vote, you need to vote. And it was this like chaotic state of like opinion. And it's hard when I spend so much time in that digital space and I love it and I learn from it and I grow, when I'm constantly confronted with things like that, with really intense opinions or images of violence and protest and murder. But I also feel like if I don't watch those, if I don't stay alert, then I'm not necessarily going to be my most physical or authentic physical self, because I don't want to be a slacktivist. I don't want to learn about all the ways that the world has been designed for some to succeed and some to fail, and not bring that back into my everyday life. And that might just be who I am as an individual, but I always want to merge online and offline, because I still think they exist in that dynamic, and that they're influential to each other. But now that we're like in this pandemic, I don't know if I need to physically exist anymore to like be a human, to be a professional, to be a thinker.
It's almost like you're transcending. This is the Matrix, right? Literally, you know, we're chatting on a Zoom call, I'm recording the audio, and this is it. You know, we exist as zeros and ones. We're part of the machine.
This is my singularity. Like, this is right. Like Ray Kurzweil. Like, this is what. Yeah, this is my version.
You know, like you become a cyborg, right? You're connected to your phone constantly across multiple platforms. The transcendence you're trying to create is there. But I mean, I got to talk about the future. I got to talk about where we're heading with it, because you know we've talked about chaos. We've talked about influencers. We've talked about activism versus slacktivism. We've talked about like trauma platforms. We've talked about liberation platforms. I mean, one of the most fascinating things beyond TikTok, I feel, is this massive wave of people going to the OnlyFans platform, which started off as an influencer platform. It wasn't supposed to be what it is today, which is ultimately a platform for empowering sex workers to work independently, to connect with their communities, to perform. You know, everyone from burlesque artists to other kinds of sex workers are in there. You know, and I've been following this, and even people like Bella Thorne, right? Child actress. I think she was a Disney actress or something like that, right?
Might have been Nickelodeon, but
or Nickelodeon or whatever. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'm gonna put a naked image of myself on OnlyFans, right? Made $2 million in a week. Then didn't follow through. Was kind of probably a jape, a joke, or a play with the culture. And not to say that Bella Thorne isn't relevant, isn't pushing boundaries. You know, I think she's like pansexual and she pushes herself out there, and she's a musician, and I kind of like her as well. But her sort of mistreatment of a platform that empowers others made them change policy for refund. Because everyone was like, screw this, screw you, you lied to us. Whereas all the other creators are not lying to people. And now she screwed an entire revenue stream for hundreds of thousands of people that are trying to earn a living in a very, very tough period of time. So, I mean, what's this all about? I mean, is this an evolution? I mean, in preparation for this talk, you talked about, you know, sex and sexuality and liberation and social and this drive for identity online. as being a relevant thing. I think that the majority of young people in the Western world will have played in the quote unquote sex work world. And it'll be completely fine. If you would have done this like 5-10 years ago and suddenly it ended up on your resume, or someone said, oh, I know that person. I saw Nick here. I saw Nick there. Talking about myself. You're going to be cast out.
Yep.
Whereas now it's like, oh, no, it's completely relevant. And you can be, there's someone, Zoe Ligon, runs Spectrum Sex Toy Boutique down in Detroit, at Thongria. And she just is this relevant, vibrant, sex positivity driven female that just deserves to be in the world and deserves to be on a platform bigger than any of these social media platforms to have a voice, right? So, I mean, what gives? What's the evolution?
Well, I love that you bring up OnlyFans, because in certain circles, I can't talk about a lot of the things I want to talk about.
Take it to a brand. Your next meeting, just say, okay, we're going to take these 3 influencers. They're on OnlyFans. Imagine.
Because Beyonce literally references OnlyFans on the remix of Savage with Meg Thee Stallion.
Right.
That happens. That to me becomes
and that remix only really happened because of the massive TikTok movement of the dance to Savage by Megan Thee Stallion, who I think is awesome, by the way. And then onto OnlyFans, it becomes this cultural relevancy, right?
When someone like Beyonce names OnlyFans on a song with someone like Meg Thee Stallion, that to me is bridging mainstream real world culture, for lack of a better word, with mainstream or popular online culture. And I talked to my peers. I was like, why are we not talking about the fact that Beyonce has named OnlyFans? Because that is a pivotal, that changed so much traffic for the platform. It exponentially created a new audience base for the platform. And there's nothing wrong with sex work. And so the fact that we do not actively talk about these things that people, consumers, users, whatever you want to call them, are clearly interested in and in pursuit of, is such a missed opportunity, in my opinion. The whole Bella Thorne is you can summarize what she did with OnlyFans is this is why we can't have nice things, because she didn't actually release any nudes. She released some, and that's her choice, and I respect that. But her behavior on that platform completely changed what that platform means for other people. So in my mind, my interpretation, she, for lack of a better word, abused what was wonderful about that platform. Right. And now that someone like Cardi B is taking herself into that space, we're just going to continue to have versions of that where the things that made that space interesting and cool and safe are getting attention. And once they have enough attention, bigger versions of creators or brands or whatever are going into that space. Yeah. I would love to be on OnlyFans. But at this point in my career, that's still something that would probably get me in some hot water, because I would have to explain. That's one of the most exhausting parts of my job, is I'm constantly explaining the relevance of something that's happening as it's happening and what that could mean for the future. Yeah. But then I have to almost defend why it's relevant. To have to explain what OnlyFans is in an office environment with people who are not on that platform, it makes me this black sheep, or this weird figure, this weird, perverse, horny, kinky figure, when all I am is just curious about what other people are doing online.
Yeah, and this is the human scale of hey, go figure, humans have sex and are attracted to people, and they've got thoughts and feelings, and they've got behaviors that they want to celebrate. And they want to operate in a world where there's a moral spectrum, and these people operate in moral spectrums that adhere to what people that don't, in these corners of our lives, don't recognize what we do. We don't recognize what they, and that's okay. The difference is okay, right? It's kind of fascinating. I think, if I was still in digital advertising, would I be pushing OnlyFans? I think as a 47-year-old white guy, it'd be very difficult to do that. But I think it'd be even more difficult for someone like yourself, a young, driven millennial, creative mind that's got positivity? I mean, talking about TikTok and how hard that is. I mean, how do we transcend all of this, right? Do we go into these truly independent spaces? We've got our own websites where we operate. We don't have a reliance. Is there going to be this mass exodus? And it's going to be like, you know what? Screw Zuckerberg, Sandberg, and Facebook, and Instagram, and WhatsApp. Screw you guys. Screw TikTok and your new partners, Walmart and Oracle. And ByteDance, right? Screw you guys. Screw OnlyFans because da-da-da-da-da. Let's create our own thing. Are we ever going to have that independence?
Thinking about it, I don't want my answer to be no, but like, I don't think we're going to have that independence. I think like the second something becomes cool and interesting and worth paying attention to, someone finds a way to monetize it, and then it like loses its sparkle.
Right.
Not to get so dark futures all the time, but like it's just, this is why we can't have nice things. It's because the like people don't understand them for what they are. And I don't know. That's a big question that like I have to think about more, and I have to like. I mean, the thing is, like,
I love all of this. I consume as much as I can, and then I walk away and I dwell on it and think very much like you do as a cultural commentator. And I'm exhausted, man.
Yeah,
I'm exhausted. But I'm trying to work out what independence of thought looks like in the future.
It's tricky because like, I think of like all these creators who like even just like what their thing is thinking. Like they just express their thinking of like capitalism or like the economic well-being of certain groups, and like what happens with them is they gain popularity because someone aligns with their statements. Right. So it like once they gain popularity, it becomes this like separate thing. I'm seeing this like weird trend. So I'm on all corners of the internet, like yourself, and I'm like deeply enamored with like tarot TikTok, like witch TikTok, tarot and psychic YouTube. And I've seen this like burgeoning trend of like, pay what you can. I'm going to build this workshop. Right. And if you can only pay $5, cool. If you can pay more, go for it. And it's such an interesting revenue stream because they are maintaining their independence and they're still creating. But now we're like seeing people like pay for the things that they love. And I wonder if it's actually taking off, because that's like a business model that we've seen in podcasts with like Patreon for a while now. Yeah. Where like if things are going to be, if people do want to be independent, the people that are consuming and loving the content need to fund it, need to fund what is interesting to them and worth investing in. Like think of, there was that podcast, Dolly Parton's America, which was made with one of the producers from Radiolab. Dolly Parton's America was entirely funded by listeners. And the last episode of that podcast, they clearly express that. And they say, you know, if you want to hear more from us, then please fund us so that we can continue to put these ideas out into the world. So that's the future I see, is if people are in pursuit of independence and it's not going to be co-opted by these social networks and these mega brands, then we, the consumers, the audience, the people that love it, need to fund it.
Yeah, and these edge places, they need, I mean, they need the brands to be interested, but they're not pursuant to them. Like Patreon is really, really interesting, right? Jack Conte, the CEO, he's kind of this vibrant character. They raised what, $90 million 3 weeks ago?
No idea.
Yeah, $1.2 billion valuation, right? But what's really interesting as well, and this is what I saw yesterday, and this is why I think that there is some hope in the world. NPR, National Public Radio in the States, their Tiny Desk series during the pandemic has been this absolute beacon for hope. I've watched it tons. One of my favorite ones is Tyler, the Creator's Tiny Desk series. BTS
Oh my gosh.
were on, right, and I'm not joking, BTS, huge K-pop band that's literally shattered all boundaries for K-pop.
Yeah. For music, really.
Rabid following around the world. They're a pop band, right? They're a real pop band. Had to be on NPR, and I'm pretty sure they approached NPR, a not-for-profit organization, right? Paid for by the people that use it, and other organizations that believe. I think that this could be maybe NPR and these independent news sources are actually the purest form of social media. In a way, they curate and they create boundaries and they let people be who they want to be, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like going into BTS territory is like a whole other episode, right? Like what a behemoth! Like, who saw that coming?
Right.
Like a globally relevant, multi-membered pop group, boy band, that ends up being so successful and like has such a like, we shouldn't even call it a fandom, it's a standum. Like those are stands, they live, breathe, bleed for that band, and they've gone on to like influence a lot of what's happening in American politics right now. It would be hard for me to, like, I know it's an oversimplification, but thinking about the games that they played on the Trump administration in the last couple of months, I think that's the reason why certain people don't like TikTok. Right. Is because like it's given agency and it's influencing opinion and behavior, and we're trying to control it. So I like that in this conversation that you're the more optimistic one about the future. That gives me some ease that I'd love to see people fund the creators that they want, the independent voices that they want, and have just a little bit more freedom and self-expression, and not be so concerned about mentioning things like sex or race or disability or any form of marginalized identity, and fuel and foster and support people who are saying interesting and compelling things that we should be listening to and learning from. That's what it is for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, with that liberal territory comes like the right of center or the far right wing territory as well, right? Having to deal with the bigots and the idiots and the small-minded people, and I mean, it's inevitable, but it's really, really hard work, right? It's difficult. So, I mean, what is it like? Let's cast out 20 years time. Okay, 2040, kids. I've got a kid. In 20 years time, my kid's going to be 20, right? What's my kid going to be doing? How's this social world going to be? Is he going to be living in a shack in the woods? Like, you know, literally catching his own food and like keeping warm by the fire because the world's gotten too chaotic? Or is he going to be literally, you know, engendered in this new world of shape-shifting, you know, like looks, sexuality, interests, like communities, culture, counterculture? I think that shape-shifting is going to be one of the big things that's going to accelerate here. But I'm interested to know what you think.
I think that a lot of the constructs that we have in our identities, things like gender and sexuality, you know, the political opinion is going to be way more fluid.
Yeah.
I think people are going to be hopefully more self-accepting and comfortable with their identity and their experience, and own their own narrative to the point where I think we're all going to be mini brands. I think we already are all mini brands, and I just see a lot of us getting better at being marketers in that way, whether that's a small business owner who's making jewelry from recycled materials, or, you know, like someone like myself who just sees the world differently and constantly wants to talk about it. I think there's going to be this like really wonderful, open, empathetic side of digital identity and social media and being a person online, but I also see this ugly side.
Right.
Nothing, like we can't be utopic or dystopic, like explicitly. There's a little bit of both happening at all times. And there is a lack of media literacy amongst this generation, and a lack of critical thinking. Think of how COVID-19 misinformation was spreading on a platform like TikTok that didn't have moderators or people clarifying. They had to include in their UI a prompt that said that there's COVID-19 related information in this post, and it might not be accurate.
Right.
So I think we need to reevaluate some of our educational institutions and teach these younger generations to be critical of what they're consuming, what they're posting, what they're creating. I've seen young kids post some stuff that's like probably damaging, but then I think about it and like, are these viral moments that impactful in the long term? That's something I want to keep my eye on, is like when these young kids are saying really bad, inappropriate things for attention. I think about like Chair Girl from Toronto who threw a chair and filmed it. Yeah. All the versions of her. I want to know what her life looks like, and whether or not her pursuit of relevance and being viral is actually going to have a long-term effect on her life and whatever that ends up being.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing point you make here. And I think you sort of like, we're boiling this down. The reevaluation of the education system, how we teach kids to look at the world, how we teach critical thinking, how we teach design, how we teach morals and ethics. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's it. I mean, that to me, that's the future of any platform that we build that tries to connect humans, right? Mm-hmm. Put humans at the center of our design process. Whereas, you know, we've basically commoditized a human and turned them into the product. And maybe this is the transcendence that we need. Well, Melissa, I've loved this conversation. I think we're going to have many more conversations like this in the future. We should do this next year when there's yet another platform.
Yeah.
And I've got like 450,000 followers on my OnlyFans account.
I'm always happy to talk to you and explore my thinking and learning. And I mean, I'm in pursuit of being a TikTok famous myself. Currently, I've been experimenting with the platform, letting strangers ask me whatever they want to ask me. And I've fallen into like a lookalike audience category of what appears to be Middle Eastern men. I'm myself Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And my algorithm says I'm 80% of my fan base are Middle Eastern men. It's only men commenting.
Yeah.
And what's been the most interesting thing for me is like, all they really seem to want to know is if I'm single and details of my romantic and sexual history, which is like, if you think about it, like if you step out of your body for a minute and think about how pervasive that is, that curiosity, like, and I'm feeding into it because I want to see what happens. Right. So in the span of like the month that I've been doing this experiment, I'm at 2,200 followers. So next year when we chat, let's see what that is. If I'm even still on TikTok or if I'm on like whatever American counterpart becomes the version that we get. I mean, we probably should just talk next week at this point. Like life could exponentially change on Sunday when that TikTok Oracle ByteDance deal is finalized, not finalized. Like, are they just distracting us? I don't know what's happening. I just read an article where Trump like basically admitted he did not know the details of that deal.
Right.
So the future is changing at such a quick pace that I think we should just talk more all the time. Is my thought.
Deal. Well, we'll make sure that we do that online. I'll do that on Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's sort of like light those platforms on fire and let them sort of become the burning platforms. I will not be creating a TikTok channel and I will not be dancing to several things. I may on occasion install the application to take a look at the chaos, because I find that chaos is interesting. I think humankind has been built from war and taxes. I think these new platforms, go against all of these ideas and are trying to liberate us. Are we going to transcend ourselves into this new singularity of social connection like you think, or are we gonna try and bear everything down into a single point where we can control it and put everyone under the spell of the algorithm? We just don't know. What we do know is that we need to teach our children how to think critically, how to think in a broad perspective. And you never know, my little boy might become famous in the future for doing something strangely like connected to social media, or he might just like disappear into the background and go and live in the woods and sort of push against the system, man. because that's
off
how
the grid
goes. Off the grid. So Melissa Eshaghbeigi, I'd like to say thank you very much. This conversation has been fascinating. A worthy start to season 3 of the Exponential Minds podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been fun.